Imagine a world where the cross never adorned the banners of Roman legions. A world where the Pantheon in Rome still echoes with prayers to Jupiter, Mars, and Venus. A world where the Roman Empire never converted to Christianity, and Europe, as we know it, took a completely different path. This isn't just a fantasy, it's a profound historical question that reshapes everything we understand about Western civilization. Welcome to Unwritten Empires, where today we explore one of history's greatest what-ifs. What if Rome never adopted Christianity? Our story begins not with a whimper, but with the roar of an empire at its zenith. In the 1st and 2nd centuries, Rome was the undisputed master of the known world. From the misty shores of Britain to the sun-scorched sands of Mesopotamia, its legions enforced the Pax Romana, a peace bought with iron and discipline. Its aqueducts carried life-giving water across vast distances, its roads connected cultures, and its laws provided a framework for a multicultural society of nearly 70 million people. Spiritually, the empire was a vibrant, chaotic tapestry of beliefs. The official state cult, centered on the Greco-Roman pantheon, provided civic identity and a sense of shared purpose. But beneath this official layer, countless other faiths thrived. The mystical cults of Isis from Egypt and Mithras from Persia offered personal salvation and a deeper connection to the divine. Philosophical schools like Stoicism provided a moral compass for the elite. It was a world of gods, spirits, and philosophies, all competing for the hearts and minds of the Roman people. Into this bustling spiritual marketplace, a new faith emerged from the province of Judea, Christianity. Initially, it was just one of many small, often misunderstood sects. Its followers were seen as strange, secretive, and even atheistic for refusing to honor the Roman gods. Persecutions were sporadic but could be brutal, yet the faith grew. It offered a message of universal love, equality in the eyes of God, and the promise of eternal life. Ideas that resonated deeply, especially among the poor, the enslaved, and women. Its tight-knit communities provided social support in a way the vast impersonal empire could not. By the late 3rd century, the Roman Empire was in crisis. Civil wars, barbarian invasions, and economic collapse threatened to tear it apart. This was the turning point. In our history, Emperor Constantine, on the eve of a decisive battle in 312 AD, saw a vision of a Christian symbol in the sky. He won the battle, attributed his victory to the Christian God, and set in motion a chain of events that would lead to Christianity becoming the state religion. But what if that vision never happened? What if Constantine had instead attributed his victory to Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun god, a popular deity among the military at the time? This is where our timeline diverges. In this alternate history, Constantine, instead of favoring Christianity, reinforces traditional Roman paganism, but with a twist. He champions a revitalized, syncretic solar religion, merging Sol Invictus with the authority of Jupiter and the emperor himself. He sees a unified monotheistic-style paganism as the glue to hold his fractured empire together. Christian persecution might not cease. In fact, it could become more systematic, viewed not just as a religious nuisance, but as a direct political threat to the emperor's divine authority. Without imperial patronage, Christianity would likely remain a minority faith, perhaps influential in certain regions, but never achieving dominance. Its growth would be stunted, its structure decentralized. It would have to compete on a level playing field with Mithraism, the cult of Isis, and Neoplatonic philosophy, all vying for followers. So, what does this new pagan Roman Empire look like a century later, around 400 AD? The great temples of Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch are not being converted into churches, but expanded and re-glorified. The intellectual energy of the era, which in our timeline was devoted to Christian theology by figures like Augustine, is now channeled into pagan philosophy and literature. We might see a flourishing of Neoplatonic academies attempting to create a sophisticated, unified pagan theology to counter other faiths and provide a moral framework for the empire. The very concept of morality would be different. Roman virtues like duty, honor, and loyalty to the state, virtues, would remain paramount, unblended with Christian concepts of humility, forgiveness, and charity for the poor as a spiritual mandate. Social structures would also be starkly different. Without the Church's later influence, institutions like hospitals and orphanages, which were pioneered by Christian communities, might not develop in the same way. The Roman view of family, slavery, and the brutal spectacle of the gladiatorial games could persist for much longer, unaltered by Christian ethics. Now, let's fast forward to the 5th century. In our timeline, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Would a pagan Rome have fared any better? It's debatable. The internal political rot, economic troubles, and external pressures from migrating Germanic tribes were immense. A unified state religion might have provided some cohesion, but it wouldn't magically solve these deep-seated problems. However, the nature of the fall would be fundamentally different. The Germanic tribes who carved out kingdoms from the corpse of the Western Empire, the Franks, the Goths, the Vandals, adopted Roman culture and, crucially, Roman Christianity. The Church, led by the Pope in Rome, became the great preserver of classical knowledge and the primary unifying force in a fragmented Europe. It was the bedrock upon which the medieval world was built. In our alternate timeline, without a unifying church, the aftermath is far more chaotic. The invading tribes might adopt local Roman pagan cults, or more likely, stick to their own Germanic gods like Odin and Thor. Europe wouldn't become Christendom. Instead, it would be a fractured mosaic of Romano-Germanic pagan kingdoms. There would be no Charlemagne-crowned Holy Roman Emperor by the Pope. The very idea of a Holy Roman Empire is meaningless without the Holy. The schism between Latin West and Greek East would still exist, but it would be a cultural and political divide, not a religious one between Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, continuing in its pagan traditions, would see the West not as heretical brethren, but as purely barbarian lands, lost to civilization. What about science and learning? The conventional narrative often paints the Dark Ages as a period of scientific stagnation caused by the Church, but this is an oversimplification. Monasteries were the primary centers of learning, painstakingly preserving and copying ancient texts, pagan and Christian alike. Without monasteries, who preserves the works of Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero? Perhaps the great pagan universities of Alexandria or Athens survive longer. But it's equally possible that much of this knowledge is simply lost in the chaos of the West's collapse. The Renaissance, our great rebirth of classical art and science, was fueled by the rediscovery of texts preserved for centuries. Without that preservation, would a Renaissance even happen? Or would it take a completely different form, perhaps centuries later? And what of the world beyond Europe? The rise of Islam in the 7th century is a pivotal moment. In our history, the Islamic caliphates expanded into lands that were largely Christian, the Byzantine Middle East, North Africa, and Visigothic Spain. Their interactions were defined by this religious difference. In an alternate world where they encounter a pagan Byzantine Empire and pagan North African states, the dynamic is completely different. The religious justification for conquest changes. The intellectual exchange between the Islamic Golden Age and Europe would be with a pagan, not Christian, tradition. This could lead to a fascinating synthesis of Arabic science and Greco-Roman philosophy without the theological filter of Christianity. By the year 1500, our alternate world is unrecognizable. North America and South America remain undiscovered by Europeans for much longer. The age of exploration was driven by a potent mix of God, gold, and glory. Without the missionaries' zeal to convert the world to Christianity, one of the primary motivations is gone. Perhaps seafaring pagan Norse kingdoms in the north or a pagan Byzantine Empire in the east become the dominant maritime powers, but their goals would be trade and conquest, not conversion. Europe itself would lack the common identity that Christendom provided. Instead of a continent united, however tenuously, by a shared faith, it would be a patchwork of competing pagan cultures. The art would be devoid of Madonnas and crucifixions, focusing instead on imperial glory and mythological epics. The philosophy would follow the lines of Stoicism and Platonism, not scholasticism. The very map of languages, nations, and cultures we know today would be redrawn. So, returning to our initial question, what if Rome never adopted Christianity? We are left with a world of profound differences. A world where the moral and ethical foundations of society are built on civic duty rather than divine love. A world where science and philosophy evolve without the influence of monasticism and theology. A world where the global map of power, culture, and religion is utterly alien to our own. It's a reminder that history is not a straight line. It's a series of crucial turning points where a single decision, a single battle, a single vision can send humanity down a completely different river of time. The Roman adoption of Christianity was one such turning point. It didn't just change a religion, it shaped the very soul of the Western world and created the foundation of the modern era. To imagine a world without it is to imagine a world without us. Thank you for joining us on this journey through an unwritten empire. If you find these explorations of alternate history fascinating, be sure to subscribe to Unwritten Empires and ring the bell so you never miss a journey into the great what-ifs of our past. Let us know in the comments what historical turning point you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching.